Hi, I'm Dr. Sydorenko, sociologist, global health expert, and immigrant storyteller.
And I'm Sacha Rudon, entrepreneur and startup advisor passionate about helping founders.
Welcome to Beyond Borders, a podcast about what it really means to build a life, a career, or a dream far from home.
Each week, we speak with people who've crossed countries and cultures, sharing the challenges, the breakthroughs, and the unexpected moments in between. That's where the real story begins. This is Beyond Border. Welcome. My name is Sacha Rudon, and I'm here with Dana Sydorenko today. Dana is originally from Ukraine. She has been in the US for 3 years now. Dana is a serial entrepreneur and LP at Flyer One Ventures, a Forbes 30 Under 30 alumni, and a veteran of the Ukrainian army where she served as a paramedic. I hope I didn't miss anything. She founded and was CEO of Nika Text Plus, which was one of the major suppliers of the Ukrainian army and won the Best in Procurement award 3 times. And she is currently the founder and CEO of GameTree, which is a social network for gamers, which has over 1 million users. Anna, welcome to Beyond Borders. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to share my journey with folks, and hopefully it's going to be helpful.
So, in the first place, what made you want to come to the US and motivated you to move over here?
So US wasn't actually our first choice. When war in Ukraine just started, we tried a couple different options. We was exploring Europe more, but then we couldn't find that opportunities and that support that we was needed in GameTree. So we decided to give a shot to California, and it was like very risky move, but I actually have like almost cinematic story about it. I remember there was a period when things was really tough. Like we didn't have money. We was about to like shut it down. And then I went back to Ukraine for a period of time to see my family. I was talking with my co-founder by phone, and he was like, okay, it's so hard. Let's just shut it down. And then we went to our server and we saw that actually amount of users since war started just grow. And we thought that we're doing something really important for people. And then I go like, okay, if we will forget about all problems that we have and think about, instead of problems, where do we want to be? Like, where do we want to end up? Let's focus on our dreams instead of our fears. And then we was thinking, and we end up with like, we should go to US, we should go to California. And it was a very bold move because we didn't have money. And then we decided to like just to try for like a month.
Yeah.
And work.
Here you are 3 years later.
Yeah.
So it's working.
Yeah.
What was your biggest culture shock when you first moved here, or since then? Because I'm sure it's quite different from Ukraine, of course.
Yeah, so like as I mentioned, we was in Europe for maybe at that point like 5-6 months, and it was like really challenging. We kind of like just facing the walls and closed doors, and it was very small startup ecosystem. And when we just came here first time, I remember there was a couple of moments where I was pretty shocked, like how open people are. Maybe they're not really that open, but they try to appear very open. And that's a very comfortable environment to do risky things, because even if you're doing something completely lunatic and wrong, people are usually not going to tell it you like right away. Because again, in our culture, people are more straightforward, and people usually, wherever like you're going to say some crazy ideas, they're going to be like, forget and never start this. That's never gonna work. Here, people more like, I believe in you. That's gonna work. Way to go. And that's very inspiring. So that was a big moment when I first faced and saw this politeness and this attitude, and people like really supportive and inspired by startups and entrepreneurs. It's like cool here. versus I feel in many other places, it's not that cool.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you came to the right place to be cool.
That never was my intention.
Great. And can you tell us a bit about how your identity as an immigrant kind of shaped your journey and your experience there as well?
Yeah, I mean, for me, being an immigrant, it never been like a good thing, you know. Like, I feel again that in Europe, like immigrants has more bad reputation than good. I really didn't want to see myself as one. And like, even probably still, I feel more like world move forward from this like settings where we all just sitting in one small country and like never show like any interest in the global world. Now I feel like we're so interconnected. It's even like annoying that governments put these rules and make you do visa and going through this process. And there are these passports that tell you where you belong and where you not belong. Like, shish, no, not anymore. Okay. Like we all grew up watching like the same kind of movies. We covered by this like another level of culture than just your national identity, I think.
Yeah, that's very true. Well, we'll see how that evolves, right? But kind of brings also the question of, since you have a remote business that could be global and you could be anywhere, um, what made you stay here and build it here as opposed to, the Bahamas or any other place in the world, really?
Damn, Bahamas sounds cool. Now when you say that. So it wasn't like by default my business was remote. Like my first business was very much local and like physical and tangible, and they needed me to be there, I don't know, every week and every day. And it was very exhausting because even though like it's fun to run your own entity, but physically being present in some specific location can be, it feels a little bit like a prison because you having lack of freedom. And I know a lot of people who experience that. So for me, it was like very conscious decision that I want to go towards more like remote working and remote work. And I want to have more freedom around my life where I am and where I'm living. So that was first a decision. And then I was looking for like how exactly I supposed to do this, like how exactly I can manage to organize my life like that. And US was very supportive towards our business. So I think for the business perspective, this is like the best country to do startup. At least it used to be. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. We're not in a very stable world right now. But I also feel like having flexibility that you have with remote work and with startup life is super important for me personally, because whatever minute I want to travel to Bahamas or somewhere, I can just go. And here you have great network, you have great opportunities, but you also have this freedom from working remote to travel to Europe, travel pretty much everywhere you want.
Yeah, that's great. And I know your previous business was more a physical business, so you had to be there, and now it's more remote. But what are kind of the differences? And you mentioned like being more remote, but like other differences maybe in work culture you've seen here versus back in Ukraine, beyond just the sector in which you're in.
Yeah. Well, I would
how
say
people work.
It's pretty different because even though like Ukraine has a little bit of European work culture, it still doesn't. Like people over there, they working way too hard. Like they don't have much choices. There's not enough place to work. So whatever you have your job, you're like so dedicated. And I had the same work culture with me. When I just came here, I was living like in my project 24/7. There wasn't any single break, and there wasn't a price that I didn't willing to pay for the company to succeed. And then, even though American culture is pretty hardworking too, it's not the same reasons. It's not the same motivation why they do this. So it took me quite some time to adapt to this and realize that the attitude I bring with me really wasn't healthy. It didn't serve me. It served, I don't know who, capitalism. Don't get me wrong, I love capitalism, but sometimes it's unhealthy. And it took some time to actually learn from people around to have more healthy relationship with work and have it maybe a little more separated, your life from your work. So I'm still learning, work in progress. But I think even though like here people don't have enough day off or vacation days comparing to Europe, and they have little less social balance or like social support from government, I still think that it's much healthier than probably in Eastern Europe.
Okay, interesting. From France, I see it differently over there, but I'm sure Eastern Europe is, something else
in
as well.
France, I guess like people more chill.
There's a work-life balance is an important tenet of life and how things go, and there's more balance in between how much you work and how much you have leisure time and travel time, especially compared to the Bay Area, if not just the US in general.
But like we give 2 weeks of like day off to our employees, and like all like week on Christmas and a week where like in summer. So like totally it's about a month, give or take.
Yeah, US is usually a couple weeks starting, I think. Yeah.
How is it in France?
Yeah, 4 or 5 weeks, or it can be a lot more. That's 4 weeks would probably be the minimum, I feel like. So yeah, in terms of integrating here as well, as you came from completely different culture, and I'm sure you faced a lot of obstacles being a female founder, being an immigrant founder. How did you kind of build your network and build your presence here from scratch, really, and integrate?
Again, I kind of like bring with me that attitude that I'm experimenting and I'm playing and I'm trying, but I kind of like play really hard, like really competitive. I still had this like belief that, okay, that's not for real. It's just a game. I was just exploring, blah, blah, blah. But I was like really, really competitive. So like whatever event or opportunity I had, I would just go there. And that was pretty scary because from the start, like, you don't really know what you're doing. Like, you just trying to like, okay, maybe I was trying to just like copy the behavior of people around because they look normal and I was completely off.
Maybe from the outside they look normal.
So outside I look pretty off too. Okay. First probably month, like, because again, for example, the way home networking works in Ukraine is pretty different. Usually it's through warm introduction from somebody who already know you. So you're never like fully a stranger. And we don't have that many of just like random events where everybody just come over. It's not really part of the culture. Like even if you hosting event, you're inviting only people who you personally know. So it's like much closer by itself. Here is like people more open. The ecosystem is more open. Everybody's welcome. But then you need to like, I wouldn't say like sell yourself, but find the spot or like know how to position yourself, which is pretty different.
So it sounds like maybe in Ukraine it's harder to get in to the groups or the networks. Yeah, that's what you're in, you're good. As opposed to US, you can have the entry level pretty easily, but then to get deeper and to get more involved, it's much harder.
Yeah. The barrier to entry in Ukraine is pretty high. Or like in general, people judge you based on like who invited you. And that's kind of like your default reputation or something.
Yeah. Can you talk to us about, you've mentioned some of it, but maybe a specific challenge you faced for building your business and working here, and even personally integrating yourself into California, into the US, and how you overcame that?
Well, personally, that was many things that was going at the same time. Like I had many different crises and like identity crisis and the war and conflict that was going on in Ukraine, and being ex-military and having still family who's in Ukraine. It was like all at once, and it was like totally overwhelming. And at the same time, something that probably not a lot of people experience, but Ukrainians definitely experience at that moment, is that you're kind of not allowed to have a joy. It makes sense. Like your country is on war, so like you feel constantly guilty and you feel constantly like terrible, and you're not allowing yourself to like enjoy the new culture or new country. So it was very much like survival mode, and maybe still it's kind of like around, but it took time to accept the fact that okay, I'm here now and there's very little I can do. And so I couldn't tell like one specific challenge or something.
Yeah.
It was everything at once. Something that I used to do still from the army, something that I learned. If it is overwhelming, it's actually you can choose to not feel it. It's not healthy, but it's like a container. You could contain your feelings towards and like wait for a moment when it's going to be more safe for you to feel those emotions.
And it's interesting you bring that up, because I imagine there could be a lot of parallels between being in the military and being a founder and building a company, even if it's in a different country. Like, how have you seen those two, or taken lessons from one to the other? How has it helped you on your founder journey as well?
I think it's like really, really important lessons, and probably a lot of people would disagree with me, but I think army experience is really helpful towards every single person. Doesn't matter what you what you're doing in your life, because it teaches you discipline. It teaches you to be on the charge and control of your feelings and your emotions, and especially that basic fundamental emotion as fear. Because a lot of people try to avoid feeling scared or like being afraid of something, but what you learn in army and what I also have with me, that fear shouldn't stop you. Like you should be in charge of this feeling. You should acknowledge it and say like, okay, I understand what's going on with me right now, but I'm not going to step back because of this feeling. And I remember the story when I was probably 18, we was going to this task, and we was driving the car, our light was turned off, and you just look in the mirror and you realize that I might not be going back. That might be one-way journey. But you're looking outside and you try and you understand that I'm not a victim here. Like it's my choice. I'm here by my choice. And I'm in charge of what's going on in my life right now. So even if I'm not going to be back, that's the price to pay. And that's what it's going to be. So this is very important lesson that I bring to me to startup world, or like whenever I do something that's really, really terrifying, I'm like, okay, I'm not a victim of this life. That's all day long. It was my choice.
Yeah, it was very powerful, taking control of your own journey. And you know, I think all founders are in some way founder by choice. And actually, compared to maybe not coming back, you can always come back from whatever the founder journey brings. So that's it feels
again
easier.
Even if it's not gonna work out the way you wanted, that's just what it is, you know. Just accept that.
And even if your business ends and it feels like the end of the world, it's actually not, and you will survive. So it's good to have that relative vision for founders.
Well, again, for me, like during the war, I thought even if I'm not survive, I'm happy with my choice. Like I'm willing to do that. And the same here, like even if our business is not gonna survive or something, I'm happy with my choice, and I did what I could.
I want to shift a bit gears to kind of how mentorship has played a role in your. I'm sure it was a big role in the army as well, in your first business in Ukraine. How has it shaped the role also in the U.S. And if it's different, the kind of mentor relationships between Ukraine and the U.S.
Well, in Ukraine, culturally, we normally don't have mentorship as it is. Now it's getting more popular. For example, recently I started being more mentor for some veteran businesses and startups. But back in the day, it really wasn't a thing. And what I used instead, because I didn't have access to mentorship, I didn't even know what is that. I just looked through the interview of people who inspired me and took them as a role model. So even though you can directly ask some questions or ask advice, more important is to borrow the mental model and the way how they see the world. I think it's super important, and maybe even more useful than directly having answers for your questions.
Great. Yeah. I think mentorship is a very important part of any career and any journey. So maybe if you have a little piece of mentorship for anyone listening and watching to this, what piece of advice would you have for anyone who wants to move to the US and build their career or build their business over here?
I would say stay open from your expectation, because expectation can ruin real experience. So just be open to whatever happens. Gonna teach you something, gonna bring you new experience, gonna make you meet new people, and be open to, absorb and learn, versus just like having the idea how it's supposed to be and then being disappointed.
Yeah. No, that's great. It is all a learning experience and journey. Absolutely. So thank you for joining us. Just to wrap it up, and our final question would be if you could encapsulate your experience in the US as a short sentence or a few words, from 3 to 5 words, it's like a kind of headline, what would that be?
Good question. Be adventure, learning, and challenge.
Okay. Adventure, learning, and challenge. Sounds like a good experience. Dana, thank you so much for joining us. It was wonderful talking to you. I hope everyone got some value from all the insight and your incredible experience.
Thanks for having me. It was a very good conversation. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. All right, bye.